This is the breaking point nobody saw coming. Carlos Alcaraz is officially out of Roland Garros, and his coach Juan Carlos FERRERO has just delivered a message that shakes the entire tennis world to its core. The Spanish phenomenon will not step onto the red clay of Paris this year. Cameras captured the exact moment Carlos walked away from the practice courts today. His head was completely down. His team was entirely silent. The fans gathered around the fences were completely stunned. But the silence from Juan Carlos FERRERO was the loudest warning of all. FERRERO did not offer the usual warm words of comfort to the media. He did not smile at the cameras and promise a quick return to the tour. Instead, he delivered a cold and shocking reality check about the physical condition and the daily preparation of his star player. This is not just a simple medical withdrawal due to bad luck. This is a massive internal crisis unfolding right in front of our eyes. The atmosphere inside the Spanish camp is currently extremely toxic. Witnesses standing near the player lounge reported an incredibly heavy and uncomfortable energy radiating from their team. Nobody is talking to each other. The medical staff looks completely exhausted and defeated. FERRERO looks absolutely furious. For years, the entire tennis world viewed this specific coach and player duo as the absolute perfect team. They were the ultimate example of harmony and discipline on the ATP Tour. That beautiful illusion is completely dead today. The harsh message from FERRERO makes one thing brutally clear. The physical breakdown of Carlos Alcaraz was not a sudden accident on the court. It was a completely avoidable disaster born from a lack of discipline. But the real story is not just about a damaged body. It is about a deeply fractured relationship inside the Spanish camp. The French Open is now completely turned upside down. Without its biggest box office star, the entire tournament landscape is fundamentally shattered. Tournament directors in Paris are desperately scrambling to adjust the main draw and save their promotional campaigns. Broadcasters are facing a massive television nightmare. Carlos brings electric energy and millions of global viewers to every single match he plays on center court. His sudden and dramatic absence leaves a giant hole in the broadcast schedule that absolutely nobody else can fill. But the financial damage to the tournament is nothing compared to the catastrophic damage to his personal ranking. Carlos is defending massive points from last year right now. With this withdrawal, he is completely surrendering his position at the very top of the sport. He is handing free ranking points and a clear path to his absolute biggest rivals. The media storm surrounding this specific decision is escalating by the minute. Sports reporters are desperately trying to decode the incredibly cold behavior of Juan Carlos FERRERO. Usually a head coach protects his young player during a severe injury crisis. The coach typically acts as a strong shield against the aggressive questions from the press. But FERRERO is stepping aside and letting the harsh reality hit Carlos directly in the face. He absolutely refused to blame the heavy clay courts or bad weather. He pointed directly to a fundamental flaw in how they managed the long weeks leading up to Paris. This is a stunning public exposure of their private training methods. The tension is so incredibly thick you can feel it through the television screen. The loyal fans are demanding immediate answers. They want to know exactly why a 21-year-old supreme athlete is breaking down completely before the biggest clay court event of the entire season. The official medical reports are intentionally vague, but the pure anger radiating from his coaching staff is completely visible to everyone. We need to talk about the terrifying locker room incident that happened right after the medical team gave their final verdict. Sources deep inside the tournament say FERRERO was visibly enraged when he realized Carlos had been secretly hiding the true extent of his wrist pain during practice sessions. The veteran coach realized his young player compromised the entire Grand Slam season simply out of stubborn pride. This massive internal battle could permanently destroy their legendary partnership on the tour. If you want to know the exact details of this brutal locker room confrontation and track the daily fallout of this massive ATP crisis, you need to subscribe right now, because this story is breaking fast, and we are exposing the truth first. So what exactly made the most patient coach on the ATP Tour finally snap? To understand this explosion from FERRERO, we have to look at the reckless decisions made over the last few weeks on the dirt. The timeline from the Madrid Open reveals a completely horrifying lack of communication between the player and his coaching staff. Carlos is incredibly young and famously stubborn. He believes his physical body is absolutely invincible. When the initial pain flared up in his right wrist during early practice sessions at the Villena Academy, he did not immediately stop. He did not immediately report the severe discomfort to his elite medical team. He simply swallowed the agonizing pain and continued to hit thousands of incredibly heavy topspin forehands. This is the exact moment the vital trust between the player and the veteran coach began to fracture. Ferrero built his entire coaching philosophy on absolute transparency. He demands total honesty about physical conditioning from all his athletes. When a player secretly hides a developing injury, the coach cannot accurately adjust the daily training load. They are essentially flying completely blind into the most demanding section of the tennis calendar. The frustration of Juan Carlos Ferrero has been silently building for many long months. He constantly begs Carlos to evolve his brutal play style. Carlos plays every single point like it is match point in a major final. He sprints violently from corner to corner. He slides aggressively on the heavy clay. He unleashes maximum rotational torque on every single ground stroke. This specific style is absolutely beautiful for the television audience, but it is a complete death sentence for human joints. Ferrero desperately wants his young star to win free points with a bigger serve. He wants him to slice the ball more often to completely reset the rally pace. He wants him to conserve vital physical energy for the grueling second week of major tournaments. But Carlos absolutely refuses to compromise his explosive identity on the court. He simply wants to overpower every single opponent with pure physical dominance. He ignores the tactical advice and relies entirely on raw athleticism. The breaking point finally arrived during a closed practice session, just days before the official withdrawal. Leaked reports from the Spanish training camp indicate the atmosphere turned incredibly ugly very quickly. Ferrero noticed a massive drop in the racket head speed of Carlos. He demanded to know exactly why the tennis ball was sitting up short in the service box. Carlos finally admitted the agonizing truth about the sharp pain shooting up his dominant right arm. The reaction from Ferrero was reportedly explosive and immediate. Sources say he completely stopped the entire practice session on the spot. He did not scream or throw equipment around the court. He delivered a cold and furious lecture about absolute professionalism and career longevity right there on the red clay. He realized his player threw away the entire French Open simply because he was too arrogant to take a mandatory rest day. The medical scans confirmed the absolute worst fears of the coach just minutes later. The structural damage was already done. The tendon inflammation was completely out of control. This stubbornness led to the ultimate physical breakdown, creating a danger far worse than anyone outside their camp realizes. The unseen danger here is not just a missed Grand Slam. It is the terrifying reality that Carlos might be permanently destroying his own physical ceiling. The entire tennis world is currently focused on the swollen wrist joint. But the real tragedy is the fundamentally broken trust between a play state, generational talent and the mastermind coach who built him from nothing. When basic trust completely evaporates in a professional tennis camp, the entire foundation collapses immediately. Ferrero is not just angry about losing a massive tournament in Paris. He is terrified of watching dark history repeat itself. The ATP Tour is an absolute graveyard of brilliant young players who completely destroyed their own bodies because they refused to listen to older wisdom. Look at the tragic trajectory of players who relied purely on explosive baseline power without ever evolving their tactical minds. Once the physical body breaks down for the very first time, the invincibility complex completely shatters forever. This internal conflict is now pushing the career of Carlos to the absolute brink of disaster. If he continues to ignore the strict tactical advice from Ferrero, he will face a very dark and painful future on the professional tour. The human wrist is an incredibly fragile biomechanical mechanism. It simply cannot survive 10 more years of violent twisting without adequate rest and a much smarter tactical approach. The coaching staff knows they have to completely rebuild his entire mentality from the ground up. But you cannot teach an aggressive player to slow down if he absolutely refuses to accept his own physical limits. Carlos believes he can simply heal the arm and return immediately to his old dangerous habits. Ferrero knows that returning to those exact same destructive habits will only result in another catastrophic injury before the Olympic Games even begin. The disconnect between player and coach is growing wider every single day. This brings us to a massive twist in this highly dramatic story. While the Spanish camp is completely melting down in private, Jannik Sinner is operating with terrifying robotic precision. Insider sources whisper that the elite team of Sinner actually predicted this exact physical collapse many months ago. They watched Carlos train with reckless intensity across the net and quietly knew his body would eventually snap under the massive internal pressure. Jannik is playing the long tactical game. He is pacing his body perfectly, while Carlos is sprinting directly into a solid brick wall. This fundamental difference in maturity and discipline is the real reason Jannik is currently dominating the ATP rankings without any resistance. We are witnessing a massive psychological shift in professional tennis today. Do you believe the incredible stubbornness of Carlos Alcaraz is completely destroying his own future? Or is the suffocating pressure from the perfect schedule of Jannik Sinner forcing him to break his own body? Tell us your exact opinion in the comments below right now, because we need to know who the American fans truly blame for this total disaster. Carlos is now facing the absolute hardest battle of his young life. It is not against an opponent standing across the tennis net. It is a massive battle against his own massive ego and his own veteran coach. If FERRERO decides the current situation is completely unfixable, he might actually walk away from the Spanish star forever. A sudden split between this legendary duo would send massive shockwaves through the entire sport of tennis. While the Spanish camp is burning from the inside out, a very quiet threat is ready to take the ultimate prize. Jannik Sinner is sitting in Paris right now, watching his biggest rival self-destruct from the sidelines. The contrast between these two young superstars is absolutely staggering today. Jannik operates his tennis career like a flawless mathematical equation. He listens perfectly to his medical team. He takes strategic breaks to let his muscles recover. He never lets his ego dictate his tournament schedule. Carlos is the exact opposite right now. He plays with raw emotion and zero physical boundaries. The result of this massive difference in maturity is unfolding clearly on the ATP rankings. Jannik is walking onto the courts at Roland Garros with supreme confidence and zero physical pain. He knows his absolute biggest threat is completely out of the picture. He does not even have to beat Carlos on the red clay to take his crown. He simply has to stay healthy while Carlos destroys himself from the inside out. The entire team surrounding Jannik is fully aware of this massive collapse. They are watching the Spanish camp fall apart, and they are capitalizing on every single mistake. Jannik knows that Carlos is his only true rival for the next decade. If Carlos cannot stay healthy, Jannik will simply dominate the entire ATP tour without breaking a sweat. The physical fragility of Carlos is the absolute greatest weapon Jannik possesses right now. He does not need to hit the ball harder, he just needs to outlast the broken body of his opponent. The psychological pain of watching this happen must be absolute torture for Carlos. He is sitting at home nursing a severely damaged wrist, while his ultimate rival lifts trophies in front of the entire world. Jannik is quietly collecting major titles and building an untouchable empire. He is proving that brutal consistency always defeats reckless explosion in the long run. The tennis world loves the flashy style of the Spanish player, but they are witnessing the absolute cold supremacy of the Italian machine. Jannik is taking over Paris without facing the only player who can truly match his top speed. The bitterness of losing the top spot on the tour without even swinging a racket is incredibly difficult to swallow. Carlos is losing his massive kingdom while lying on a physical therapy table. The ultimate changing of the guard is happening right now, but can Carlos survive this internal collapse? The upcoming weeks will completely define the rest of the career of Carlos Alcaraz. FERRERO has drawn a massive line in the sand. The entire tennis community is aggressively debating the true intention behind his shocking public message. Was this an actual threat to leave his player, or was it a desperate form of shock therapy? FERRERO knows that soft conversations behind closed doors are clearly not working anymore. Carlos simply nods his head and then immediately returns to his reckless physical habits. By exposing the truth to the public, FERRERO is forcing Carlos to confront reality. He is putting massive public pressure on the young star to finally grow up and take his medical advice seriously. This is a massive gamble from the veteran coach. Shock therapy can either save a dying relationship or burn it to the ground completely. We must deeply consider a massive rumor circulating within the tennis industry right now. If FERRERO actually decides to walk away from this toxic situation, there are other elite coaches waiting in the shadows. The name of Boris Becker is constantly whispered in the player lounge. Becker brings massive aggressive strategy and strict German discipline. Could a completely new voice be the exact thing Carlos needs to fix his stubborn mentality? Changing coaches in the middle of a massive injury crisis is incredibly dangerous. It could reset his entire tactical foundation right before the Olympic Games. But if Ferrero feels he can no longer protect Carlos from his own worst impulses, the legendary partnership is officially finished. Carlos has to make a definitive choice before the grass season begins. He must humble himself and completely surrender to the strict process of his current coach, or he must prepare to find a new mentor. This specific decision will literally change the history of the sport. We are watching the most important weeks in the life of this young generational talent. Will he finally listen to the warnings, or will he continue to destroy his own potential? The clock is loudly ticking, and the silence between player and coach is terrifying. If you want to know the final fate of this legendary partnership, and see exactly who might replace Juan Carlos Ferrero if he walks away, you must subscribe to our channel right now so you do not miss the definitive answer in our next breaking video. Will this shocking message destroy their partnership forever? Or is it the brutal wake-up call Carlos desperately needs?